it's not exclusive, right? So everyone wears just an apron. You, me.
Yeah, I'm going to be wearing just an apron.
Exactly. So not only will we get charged for sexual harassment on one case, but on two for indecent exposure as well.
You might as well do it across as many areas as possible. I'll just cut a hole in the front of my apron so that my dick's flopping around.
Yeah, dude. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 88 of the Thought Patrol podcast. This week, we're taking a look at the future of gaming. We're going to talk a little bit about the Stadia, Google's new cloud-based computing service for video games. Delve in that, what that means for current owners of video games, and the hardware side of things, and the future. Give our opinions, see what we think about it. And so I'm excited. I've looked a lot into this on my own time. Very interested in the idea of it, and interested to see what will happen, see if it takes off or not. But before we get into all that, it's me and Shawn this week. We're going to go ahead and start with some intros. Shawn, how have you been, my friend? What you been doing this week? Anything special to share?
Still looking for work. Started Devil May Cry 5. I love it. It's very fun. They brought a bunch of shit back. All these little Easter eggs.
Okay,
makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside.
I was going to say, without spoilers, have you seen that scene? But I don't think you have from what you were saying earlier, so never mind.
No, I'm on B's second mission. He's hunting down the first tree, or the second tree. Although I don't know if Nero dropped that first tree, but I ran across the thing that fell down. And I remember seeing somebody else do that, which was cool. I could hear the V fighting when I was playing Nero's mission.
Yeah.
And I could hear him fighting, but I didn't see where it was. And then the game glitched, and I saw him running across the bridge after it had fallen. Oh, yeah, I blew that part. So, I just see, this goth dude just, floating across thin air, and I was like, I wished I had a wave emote or something.
I had,
but yeah.
When I was playing through that segment as V, and for people that haven't played Devil May Cry, there's something that they introduced in this game where a lot of the missions, the characters' paths will often intersect throughout the level, and that character can either be like a ghost of your former playthrough or another person playing through, or sometimes it could be an AI if it says the Devil May Cry staff. And it could be another person. And sometimes if you have friends playing the game, it will take their ghost and put them in your game. You may not be playing with them live. Sometimes you may not. It's all built to be very fluid. So it's not necessarily a co-op game, but just that's a really interesting thing that they have there that doesn't necessarily need to be there, but it's cool that it exists. And again, like Shawn was saying, you come across other people. I had one where I was V and I was on that bridge and I was crossing it. I looked to the right because I saw the bridge fall and the one I played, seeing if I could find the dude, and I look over to the right and I see Nero on a rooftop, and he's just getting his ass beat by these fucking demon things. I'm just moseying along, and I just look to the right and see a man being murdered off in the distance by hundreds of these stupid little bug demons. I just thought that was funny. Hearing the screams of pain in the background, just as I moseyed on.
You can always tell when it's happening because you'll hear the sounds of battle.
Yeah, it's a cool little thing though, and they have some missions where they fully utilize it, where you will actually be playing in an arena with another person, which is cool. So definitely still not a fully co-op thing, but it is just a nice little thing that makes the world feel more alive in a way that there's multiple branches of story going on at the same time. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I got a thumbs up from the other guy, and I gave him one too, so that was pretty cool.
There's really no reason not to be honest, because you give that person a free revive orb when you do that shit. So I just give everyone stylish ratings. Even if I didn't see it. Have a stylish, get a free revive.
Although you have to keep in mind, if you end up using a revive orb, your score goes down.
Yeah, well, the moment you die, your score goes down. Because you lose the no continue bonus. So the moment you go down, you literally have to restart the mission to negate that bonus. So
Yeah. I only went down once. That one fight, the one with Lady, which it shouldn't be blowing too much, was I was not prepared. I did not expect the strategy, and they don't take you by the hand and guide you through
I
shit.
know.
Like they organically do in a sense because they give you everything you need to know to fight the battle on the way there. But when you get in, you don't know you need it, and it took me a second to figure out what was going on, because like every boss fight I've started, I held all the way through till like the last maybe 5% where my score would start to die. Like I would have an S, and then the last bit when the boss just starts doing everything and pulling out all the stops, that's when it becomes harder to keep your chain going, and that's when it'll drop to an A or a B if it's going to drop. And like I was wailing on her just fine, and then like she just fucking went batshit and fly, and I was like, oh god damn it! And she'd always be on the other side of the arena, and the fucking then I'd have to find those things and do the thing to whatever,
Yeah, get
and
close and
I
stuff.
don't know anything. Yeah, and then when you get close, she's got like an AOE attack that she does, and I was just like, mother fuck budget,
I
and I
figured out
think
that
like she killed me.
I figured out that the one of Nero's arms, the the one that looks like a almost like a grenade. I found out mid fight that if you're not locked on when you press B, it gives you like a mid-air like push, like you actually fire the glove into the air and it will push you forward. So you have like a mid-air dodge pretty much. And that
That's one of my favorite ones.
once I knew that, that fight was cake after that.
I've got a special version of that where it gives me an additional vertical jump.
Oh, that's cool as fuck.
So the other one, the standard one, I think it is Gibraltar or something like that. It pushes you forward or off to the side, but it doesn't push you up. And
Okay.
this one is a recolor, and it also gives you a vertical jump as long as you're stationary, as long as you're not moving in a direction. So all I have to do is, even if I'm in the air, as long I just let the
Stick go.
left thumbstick go neutral, and then I fucking pop it, and I'll shoot up over attacks, and I've been using that constantly. Or I immediately, because there's certain moves you have to fucking have in Devil May Cry, and he doesn't start with them. Like the one in the air where you charge down, and the one on the ground where you charge and you have to have. So I immediately bought those, and because I pre-ordered it, I got. If I pre-ordered on Amazon, you get a banana weapon, but if you pre-ordered it through GameStop, you got 100,000 red orbs. So I was able to start off with all of the bonus weapons, which suck, by the way. They're fun to play with, but they suck. Like there's one that's essentially it's a vibrator for Kitty A. Like I'm not kidding. It's an arm built for sex, but if you use it, it pumps, right? Like a
Yeah.
fucking dildo. But while it's pumping, you heal.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
that's kind of useful, but it has no combat usefulness. And I think in Devil May Cry, offense is the best defense. So I'm not really sure how often I have that in the end of my weapon chain. Your loadout, like it's my last one.
Yeah.
So if I run all the way through the loadout, or if I know I need to heal, I'll burn them all, and then I'll throw that on. But I haven't had to use it yet. And you get the recolor, the other one with the additional move. That one is good. The Mega Buster for Mega Man it's a ranged weapon.
I like that when
It's
you have it equipped, you actually like a lot of Nero's animations are like Mega Man, like the way he jumps and shit like that. He jumps like old Mega Man and stuff like that. That's pretty cool.
yeah. When you hit certain enemies, they'll do certain poses too. And then you could do a Mega Buster shot, but it seems you lose the weapon because when I did it, it just disappeared. So I was like, oh fuck, all right.
Yeah, usually
But
if
I
you
stopped using that.
if you have to charge the glove to fire it, you lose it in the process with every single one of them. So if you had to hold like
Oh,
circle to fire it, like till it all the way pumped up, then that's when you lose it.
oh, like the laser beam,
Yeah,
which I still have yet to use.
that's a good
I'm
way to get
so
it.
into doing the air dodge. I hold the laser beam. I haven't used any of the really charges. I'm so into the combo system. I'm so into playing it old school that I don't stop to charge anything. Because in the old Devil May Cry games, if you stopped moving for anything, it was over. Like you had to keep moving. You had to keep attacking. Like it was all about the mobility. And so it's like against my nature to stop moving and charge anything.
I
Although I
like
do like that rocket pistol thing, but I just haven't figured out how to use it effectively. Like once you fire it and you jump on it, you're just flying all over the goddamn place, and I'm not sure if you can attack while you're doing that.
I
Or
always
if
used
it's
it as a way to maintain if I'm not close to an enemy. I use it as a way to maintain my style up because it will slowly generate style as it hits a target if you just fire it normally. So I'll fire it on a target, let it beat him up kind of, and then I'll go wail on someone else, and it's a good way to build style. That's what I was using it for.
yeah, I do the same thing. Yeah, it's also really good to use in the air because it smacks them to the ground and does they take damage from the punch in the air and then the punch when they hit the ground. And then that kitchen aid one is cool and it does decent amount of damage, but in the long run, I'm not sure how useful it is because when you use it, you're stationary while you're attacking the creature, and it just takes rapid fire damage. And then if you use the charge attack, it flies off and hits them, and they start taking a bunch of damage. But it does it for a while, so you're without that. I don't know. It's more like gimmick to me.
There was one that was really cool. I think it's the Tomboy. I don't know if you've used it yet, but if you just press B,
I haven't got it yet.
yeah, you just like press B and you basically charge your sword, so it's like fully revved all the time. But you can't lock on with it at that point, so you don't get any of your directional combos like holding back or forward when you hit a button. But you're just like you go into like almost like a rage mode where you just swing wildly and you have huge AOE effects on your attacks. It's really good for groups. But like it's hard to use in the air and you lose control of Nero as you're doing it kind of. So it's cool and it looks nice. It's just I never used it because it felt hard to keep up style with it unless I had a shitload of things I was hitting at the same time. So I love that game. That game's awesome.
It's fun to explore. I even the starting weapon's still useful. It's not the kind of like it's really good for giving you space if you're getting crowded or if you need to split up a group. Like that's almost what it's best for. Or again, using it in air combos.
Yeah.
I am loving it. I've only gotten a D rank once. That was because I didn't catch on to what was going on in that. And the shitty part is I had her down to like 2 hits left when she dropped me. But I'll fix it next time I play through. But I have been enjoying it very much, and I don't know if it's the best Devil May Cry, but it's definitely up there. I read a review where they were talking about it, and they were talking about you can always go and replay Devil May Cry, and they're all, they're good games. And then somebody's like, but who? And then one guy was like, yeah, but who wants to replay Devil May Cry 4? And I'm like, are you smoking crack? That game was awesome. The fuck is wrong with you? You can go onto the fucking PlayStation market right now and buy orbs for Devil May Cry 4, so you can go in powered up. Still, now.
All right.
Tell me the game's not fucking popular.
Have you touched anything else, video game wise?
No, I've stared at Nier since I got it last week. Nier is pretty much the last of the games I can buy. I've already paid off. What is it?
Code Vein.
For whenever the fuck that comes out. But I have $113. It needs to go one direction. I don't have any money. I have $200. It needs to go another direction. And fuck you, WoW players, all of you, every single one of you, eat a fucking dick. Yeah. So it's pretty much just going to be playing back catalog because I have to. Also, my daughter's birthday is next Saturday, two Saturdays from now, and I have MegaCon coming up, and my job refuses to pay me decent wage, so it's a financial nightmare. Good stuff.
Good stuff. Good to hear. Glad you're
glad you're
doing.
But Devil
May
May Cry is good. So
dope.
Yeah, there's my one thing.
Okay, cool. What am I thinking? I know Sekiro launched. I've been watching people play the game, but I have not dove into the game yet. I plan to eventually. I don't know when though. Like Final Fantasy still got me by the balls, so I've been doing a lot of that. I will like to get into that at one point though, so I'll probably end up picking up maybe sometime this week or sometime next week and diving into that. It looks nice. I mean, I could say that, but I haven't really done much. I've seen that across the internet, people are kind of pseudo split because it's not really Dark Souls, but it's from FromSoft, and FromSoft has said they're not doing Dark Souls anymore. So it's just kind of people sad that Dark Souls is gone. and that the game doesn't, since the game's more focused on a character than a role that you fulfill, like shoes that you fill. There's not as much openness to the combat. I mean, there's still attachments and things that you can upgrade as a skill tree, but you're not going to see people running around in heavy armor. You're not going to see people running around in light armor because you are the same person. You're just a shinobi. So the stealth would be kind of how you deal with things, or just the katana. You're not going to be shooting magic spells or shit like that, which is all understandable. It's just people feel like the game's kind of basic compared to like the previous entries from FromSoft. That's fucking hard to say. So that's interesting. It's interesting watching it kind of play out. I'd like to see how people's perspective of the game shifts as time goes on, because a lot of people, again, we said it before, it's like this honeymoon phase where you're just happy that the game's here and that you're unraveling it, and then as it kind of sinks in that some of the things are lacking in one way or another, or may not, depends on the person playing, then your perspective of the game kind of changes over time. So it'll be interesting to see what people think about this game in a few weeks after they've fully delved into it, because it's only been out for a few days at this point, or maybe a week at this point. But
I think it looks really interesting.
I love the look of it.
I love the Tenchu series, and even though it doesn't carry over the stealth or approach a battle, because Tenchu would give you a map, and there'd be X number of enemies on the map, and you're supposed to go in and stop, kill, annihilate this bad, and your approach and how you use your loadout, because you choose your loadout, or I don't remember if you crafted it or not, and it was simply go from point A, and however you chose, you had to get to point Z, and you could fight or not fight things, but there's a lot of it that was necessary, and there's just an assload of unpredictability, which is, I noticed, something that I felt a bit of in Bloodborne. But the difference is Bloodborne has extremely clunky, deliberate combat, and the Tenchu games were very fluid, very quick. I mean, you died just as quick as you could fight, but you had to know your approach, and you had to be able to react with lightning reflexes. And the game was extremely hard. And at the time, there wasn't any other games out there like that. And the Tenchu series was fairly popular. The last installment was on PlayStation 2, which was the last one I played. So when I heard that Sekiro carried over some of that, was like a spiritual successor, but it still, instead of using stealth to make your kills manageable, because directly attacking something is just really fucking difficult in Tenchu. In Sekiro, they put the emphasis on combat. So you can stealthily kill some things, but it's definitely not anywhere near a primary game mechanic. Like, the emphasis is on whooping ass.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that it's more fluid, it moves faster, the mobility's a bigger influence.
I do one thing.
Everything I've watched of the other games they're just chunkier and slower. You're tanking your way through stuff.
Yeah, but then again, it comes down to the person, because the thing I like about Dark Souls and Bloodborne in those games is that there's a methodical approach to everything that you do, and you're slow for that reason. Same thing with like Monster Hunter. Like you have to be very wary of what you do at what time, and you can easily get caught with your pants down if you throw out an attack that has a long wind up or a long end animation or something like that leaves you open. You don't want to be doing that necessarily when surrounded by 5 people, and then, oh, now I'm dead and back at the shrine kind of thing. So I do like the idea. I like the grapple hook, the verticality of everything. But a lot of what I've heard is it's there's only like a few ways to approach combat, where compared to like Dark Souls, there's like an abundance of ways to approach combat, which again, it makes sense. They're going for a more streamlined approach to the genre. But I could see the argument from both sides, why people aren't just more sad that it's not another Dark Souls title, and that Dark Souls is kind of fizzling out in a way. And some people just happy that the game's here and they're able to play it and explore the world. So, but
also, it doesn't hide its story behind bebobs. You have to seek out and under a pebble in a corner of a map. Like, the story's told you thematically, which I like too.
And it's also set. It's more set on a realistic environment than the others were, although it still has its supernatural aspects to it.
Yeah, I haven't played mine yet, but I am looking forward to it.
I don't know when I'll pick it up.
And then, as I prepare to, I know that I'm going to start remembering the nightmare that was the Tenchu series.
So imagine that times 100, because these games are incredibly difficult. and that's a lot of what I've heard is that these games are incredibly difficult. So that'd be fun to hear you as you slowly descend into madness. I'd be down for that.
Yeah.
All right. Besides that, all else I've played is Final Fantasy. They dropped a trailer for the new expansion. That was super exciting. We don't really have a lot of people that play Final Fantasy in our community besides our friends, so won't go too much into that. But I'm excited for the new Dancer class. People are complaining that there's not a new healer. I think these people are entitled. I don't know. I think like they're giving us so much. Like the only comparison people have to make is that Heaven's Sword dropped 3 classes: a tank, a DPS, and a healer. Where this one's only dropping 2 classes. From what we know, people have speculated that Geomancer might be coming as a healer because it's referenced in the Astrologian questline. But we're also getting 2 races, and then people are mad about the gender locking of the races because they are in fact doing that as of right now again. So there are only female bunny people, and there are only male Hrothgars, or the lion people. So you could fulfill your furry fantasies to the maximum. But I really, it doesn't bother me. Like I don't really, all the choices they're making, the only thing I could see is with the gender locking is that like the Makote they had were originally gender locked, and then they removed that restriction, so why go back to gender locking? But then with the Makote,
male or female?
The Makote males were rare. Now the thing is, they're going with the lore explanation. The thing about the male Vajra, whatever they're called, is it's not that they're rare. It's that they're literally a different race. They're like they look entirely different. Where the Makote were rare, but they looked the same. It was the same idea. You didn't see them often, but they were the same. They looked the same. So if they were to do male, that'd be almost 2 races in itself, because you have the female and the male, like feral equivalent that almost looks like fucking lizard people or whatever the hell they are. So I could kind of understand that. So it's just I just don't give a shit. And another thing that's interesting,
I think it adds cultural depth. I think the Makote would have been made sense if they had kept it the way it was, because for the Makote's culture, the males, it follows a bear mentality. The males go off and venture. Like Makotes don't often settle down into mated pairs, or if they do, they still don't stay together. Like the females are the ones that build villages. They're the architects, the artists. They're the ones that stay stationary. Females will settle an area and they'll raise families and they'll train them to hunt and do all that shit. And what the males do is they go off wandering, and it's very much like an animal mentality. If they find somebody to mate with and they feel like it's on, they'll mate. Some of them will mate with groups of women, whoever they come across. Some will find one, mate with them, form a family unit, but then they'll still go off wandering and just doing whatever. That's their nature, right? That's how their culture works. Like the females, it's a strange kind of dichotomy, because the females actually do more and have more strength in terms of overall position than the males do. Yeah. So it would make sense if the Moko today were gender locked.
The creative,
it doesn't make sense. Go ahead.
The creative director, Yoshi P, or whatever his name is, he that was the idea originally. People complained and they changed it. So I think what we'll see here, they're gonna be strong with the gender locking. People are gonna complain and they'll change it again. That's what I think might happen. I mean, it's the same thing that happened.
The Vajra are similar. You talking about the bunny people, right?
Well, yeah, but the thing with the Makote is that they look alike. The Vajra are like entirely different from male to female. They have entirely different looks. So I don't know. I just think these people are, like, I understand we only have 3 healers right now, and we have a lot of DPS, 11 now technically if you count Blue Mage and Dancer. But if you think about it in the realms of the type of DPS we have, it makes sense, because we only had 2 physical range DPS with the Bard and the Mechanist. So now we have a third, which is the Dancer. We have 3 casters now. We have 3 melee. So it's kind of evening out DPS, and I can see them dropping a healer next expansion. Or maybe they really are dropping a healer this X-Pack. They haven't said anything about it. They're letting the community fester in its toxicity on it, and then eventually they'll drop Geomancer. And that'd be interesting. I'd be down for that. But at this point, I'm still as excited now for the expansion that I was before Tokyo Fan Fest, which is where all this information was dropped. They showed off the new areas. They showed off more of the big bad, the Warrior of Darkness, things about that. More just in the realms of like what they look like. Apparently, they have like, I don't know, I'm not too, because I've skipped all the cutscenes, I'm not too super in depth with the lore here, but there's something about the first crystal, and there was like, so we might be going back. I don't know what the hell's going on, but it looks all really fucking cool, and I'm super excited. These new areas are absolutely gorgeous. They're so pretty, and I cannot wait to explore them. Especially, like, I love the idea of an X-Pack dropping, and day one, just the flood of people going out and exploring this newfound land, and we have not done that yet with Final Fantasy. We've always been behind the release of all this stuff, so we came in afterwards. So this would be really cool as the first X-Pack that we've all, as a group, have been able to participate in, and everyone in that push to get through the content, get to levels, explore the expansion, and do all that. I think that's going to be really awesome come July. So that's exciting, and I'm super excited. I cannot wait for that. I've convinced... what was I going with that? I don't even know. I just hope everyone comes back to it, because we have a few that kind of dropped off because we're like near the end of an expansion. For some reason, they don't want to play it because when the expansion drops, the gear will be invalidated. But there's still content to do within this expansion that they haven't done. So again, it's their own prerogative. They're playing Division 2, collecting their beanies and snow jackets and stuff. That's fine. But I'm excited. So glad you could join me, Shawn. I'm glad all you guys tuning in could join us. Before we move on, we have some housekeeping. We stream on Twitch, boys. Twitch.tv/ThoughtPatrol. Feel free to check us out. Stop by, drop a follow, say hello. If you want to know when we go live, we have a few ways you could do that. You can follow us on Discord. You can follow us on Twitter at ThoughtPatrolPD, or on Facebook, the Thought Patrol Podcast. You can check out all the announcements through there. Be the best way to keep in touch with us. Also, while you're tuning in, if we speak with something, what are your thoughts on Stadia? What are your thoughts on Final Fantasy? What are your thoughts on Devil May Cry? Feel free to drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you guys. While you're at it, feel free to also subscribe so you get the new content as it drops every week on Tuesday at 8 a.m. Finally, we also have a sister Facebook page to Streaming Geek, where there are reviews that go up for pretty much all streamable content. So definitely interesting stuff over there. Feel free to check that out. Finally, we have our iTunes reviews. If you want to help us out, have a show more in the iTunes algorithm, get more people in here, feel free to drop a review. Whatever you think we deserve, give us some honest feedback, just so we can kind of, what's the word? Mold. Whatever. We can kind of mold the show towards the community, what you guys are feeling, what you're liking and not liking. The feedback's really important to us. We'd really appreciate it. With all that out of the way, mailbags. We got some mailbag questions this week from number one, our boy, Handsome Jack, Alex, writing in. I don't know what this word is. I'm assuming it's mendicants. Mendicants? Mendicants?
Mendicant, yeah.
Mendicants? Okay. What does that mean? Let's see. Mendicant. Given to begging, a beggar. Okay. Fuck you, Handsome Jack.
Don't worry about you.
I don't know what it means. What's up, Mendicants? With the release of Sekiro and myself picking up Kingdom Come Deliverance, I'm inclined to ask this question. Do you prefer games that take place in fictional universes, or games that are set in our world as we know it? Feel free to give an example of a game you like that aligns with your preference. Peace. I'm going to go kill some interns. No idea what that means, but I feel like I need to contact the local authorities. That we have a Swede running rampant, killing people.
Don't kill any hot interns.
Yeah. Let them just get the coffee for you while you kill the other intern.
Yeah. Wearing only an apron.
Oh, sorry. Ooh. Is that sexual harassment? Only if they don't like it,
yes.
Right? If no one finds out. Hey, if we ever get interns at the Thought Patrol HQ, that is our uniform policy. But the thing is it's not exclusive, right? So everyone wears just an apron. You, me.
Yeah, I'm going to be wearing just an apron.
Exactly. So not only will we get not only get charged for sexual harassment on one case, but on two for indecent exposure as
And
well.
you might as well do it across as many areas as possible. I'll just cut a hole in the front of my apron so that my dick's flopping around.
Yeah, dude.
And then I'll dust your desk or dust the shelf right above your chair so that my shit's flopping around in your face while I'm cleaning. I'll be all over that.
I just need us to be in a meeting or something, like our stocks are dropping or some shit, and then it's just you slamming your fist on the table with your cock flopping around. Be beautiful.
Cock flopping.
Yeah, dude.
That's the official episode name, cock flopping.
Beautiful. All right. So Shawn, what do you think? I think I know the answer to this for you. I think you prefer fictional universes.
I don't why the fuck? I read fiction to get the fuck away from
Reality.
My universe.
Yeah.
Yes, all of my entertainment is based around escapism, and on occasion some other higher value, but usually around escapism. So why would I sit there and be like, man, I want to play a game about somebody who's dealing with a job that sucks and can't support his family, and then terrorists attack and he has to run out in the real world and use real guns? And why would I want somebody to have superpowers or fight demons? Gosh, that's boring. No. No, and a perfect example, I've already mentioned it, Devil May Cry 5 takes place in a fictional sort of kinda Earth. Although there's tons of, just like every country they reference does not exist. So I really don't know what plane of existence it takes place on.
It's a parallel universe where like Pangea never separated, so it's just one big continent kind of thing.
But I know that Dante is badass.
Just completely ignored that. Like, please don't mind the village idiot. I would have to agree. It depends on the game, to be honest. But most of the games that I have played take place in a fictional universe in one way or another, because of the just because you can't have. I mean, they do exist, and there have been times in history where extraordinary events have occurred, and extraordinary people have stood up to meet that call and shit like that, and we see that in games. A lot of times it ends up being like a war game or something.
The action game.
Yeah, but I much rather have a fantastical approach to things. Not even for the escapist element, but just for the idea that I feel like it makes for a more interesting world as a whole, because it's something new. It's not our own. Like I don't need a game that takes place in South Florida and I could walk to my local McDonald's and buy a cheeseburger when I could do that in real life and I don't have to pay $60. I pay $3 for the cheeseburger, or $2, whatever.
That being said, if you incorporate fantastic elements in a game that's set in the real world, that changes things. Like Onimusha eventually incorporates some spirituality into it, or not Onimusha. Fuck! All of a sudden, I forgot it. The Sega game, though. Have you seen any Sailors? I'm looking for Sailors. That game.
Oh! It's the one that's a cult classic, right?
Yeah, I own it.
Oh my fucking god! They're making a third one.
It's over there.
Making a third one. I'm googling it. Japanese.
I don't know why I said Onimusha.
Cult classic game. It was on PS1.
Dreamcast.
Right? It's on PS1. Oh, Dreamcast. Jesus, I'm old.
Dreamcast and then later Xbox.
Shenmue. There you go.
Shenmue. There we go. Because it's just like Onimusha. Or like, the games where you're a normal person in a normal world and then you get a power, or that kind of thing. When it goes into the realm of fiction, I can handle. But I'm so bored with GTAs and fucking shooters, military, whatever.
To be honest,
the only ones I ever really liked was Rogue 6 something 6.
I think at this point,
also, I can't remember anything.
I think at this point, GTA like supersedes. They're either far into the future because there's so much crazy shit in that game that you have ease of access to. I feel like it's like maybe like a far off Earth in the future kind of thing than
a satirical Earth.
Yeah, like Saints Row kind of thing.
Saints Row Saints Row started off as a GTA clone and then just went bonkers.
Yeah.
You still want to play that one where they I don't even know the story in Saints Row, but that one where you go to hell and the entire game takes place in hell, that one's fun as shit.
What's an example that lines with your preference, Shawn?
I already mentioned it, like
Oh,
Devil May
Devil May
Cry or
Cry.
Final
Okay.
Fantasy.
Yeah, I would go with Final Fantasy. Like if Final Fantasy was a game that was set in, I don't know, Africa, killing small African children, I would be, first of all, erect.
The fuck kind of game is that? Jesus Christ!
But I would be nowhere near
Every
as
Ku Klux Klan member on
Yeah.
Mankind goes out and buys a PlayStation just to kill little African babies.
Well, I mean, if it was in Africa, they'd most likely be blacks killing blacks. But
It doesn't matter. You can't let me knock on the Klan for like 5 seconds without.
I mean, no, they deserve
trying to
it.
be all real.
Nah, they
about
deserve
it.
it. You're right.
Oh my god! Funny side story. I worked
Okay.
in a brick company for a while, a masonry company, and we used to put up brick walls. And one of the foremen, the biggest guy in the scrotum pole, used to be in the Klan. And you gotta understand, like most of the people I worked with were either black or Mexican. There was like, I think I was the only white guy besides myself was the guy that I rode to work with, and the people who owned the company, and the foreman.
Okay.
This guy, I can't fucking remember his name. Everybody else was either black, like the Daytona crew was black. The DeLand crew, which was the one I worked with, was almost entirely Mexican, with like 3 or 4 black guys or some shit like that. So, like everyone finds out that he was in the Klan, so he gets the whole Daytona crew's there. So you got all these black dudes standing around, and they're like, "Why were you in the Klan? Why did you do such a thing?" And his response was, "Well, they told us that they do picnics."
What the fuck?
Like, it was a social event. Oh my god.
Hey.
So, every time I run into a bona fide, like, card-carrying racist, I expect them to tell me that they're that way because it's a social event.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they throw good picnics and make potato salad.
When's the next picnic, fam? Step in your
Yeah,
coleslaw,
I want
bitch.
some of that fucking white supremacy potato salad, please.
Bro, what if they did throw picnics, but they were like racially insensitive picnics? So it was like full of Kentucky Fried Chicken and watermelon and like grape juice.
And if they had then they would have like, what are those nuts that used to have the racist nickname? Macadamia nuts? Are those the ugly brown, those brown ones that are really difficult to get the shell off of because the shell's
Walnuts?
so thin? No. I think they're called macadamia nuts. And they used to call them N-word. No, dude, I just told you. Macadamia nuts. They look like toes. And because they're brown,
I'm just naming off
racists
nuts.
used to call them
Almonds.
N-word toes.
Oh, Jesus.
They used to call them N-word toes. My grandfather, when I was little, I caught him. He's like, people used to call him nerd toes, and I was like,
oh my
what?
gosh.
And like, yeah, I was
you're right.
What?
You're
He's
right.
like, never mind.
Let me see.
They're macadamia nuts. Yeah, they used to call them that.
Okay, N-word toes. Oh, I found them. Brazil nuts.
Okay, Brazil nuts. There you go.
Yeah. Apparently comes from the
Brazil
fact
nuts
that when
is
they are
pretty
still in their
cool.
shell, they resemble a black man's pedal digits.
Pedal digits. By the way, it does not. I mean, it only it is the loosest sense of the term resembles a toe. But if you had to find something it resembled besides a rotten lemon wedge, then I'd go with the toe.
Apparently, it was a small chocolate candy with white cream filling from the 1960s too.
They had a 1960s candy with a racial word in it.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past the 1960s.
Wow. Yeah, but I don't know, man. The 60s.
It probably wasn't like commercial. It was something like people made at their home, and it just got big that way. But it wasn't like
Would you like to eat anthropomorphized candy that is named after a human being's digits?
Yeah, you didn't his pedal digits.
Has more melanin than you.
Yeah. I was so safe. I love it. All right, let's fucking move forward. I don't know how we got here. Yeah. Let us know what you think, Jack. Jack. Ba-na-na-na. Oh my God. Jesus fuck. That was much louder than it needed to be. Hurt my ears. Oh my goodness. All right. Thank you for the question. Let's move on.
Sultry Swede.
Lark has sent us a question as well. Appreciate it. He says, and I quote, this fucking asshole, with the expansion to Final Fantasy XIV, what are your thoughts on this question people actually care about? Now, that sentence is kind of hard to read. It should be like, with the expansion to Final Fantasy coming out soon, what are your thoughts on this question people actually care about? What is the lower cost, max $20 indie game that you were surprised how much you enjoyed it? Mine was Dead Nation. It was a top-down shooter with great combat, varied enemies, multiple viable builds, and fun multiplayer. So, Shawn, you have a 20 or below budget indie title that surprised you with how much fun you had with it. I have a bunch. Well, not a bunch, but a few.
Yeah, there's oodles.
Yeah, they're all over
I can
the
go
place.
through my fucking
PlayStation
to list. Let's see, 2064, read-only memories. Another Axiom Verge. It's an excellent one.
Is that that's like a Metroid Prime game,
Metroidvania.
Right? Yeah, okay.
Bedlam was fun. Little weird, but fun.
All right.
Broforce was fun.
Oh, I remember Broforce. There's a bunch of cheap indie games. Good. But even
Dragon Fin Soup.
That's a game.
Fat Princess Adventures, yeah. Gianna Sisters, Twisted Dreams Director's Cut is fucking bananas good platformer. And the music in that is fucking fire. It's done by Machine Supremacy.
Dude.
And they're just an excellent fucking band.
Why is it platformers always have the most fire fucking music, dude? They're so good.
Yeah, dude. Fury was good.
Oh yeah, Fury was great. Guacamelee.
I'm not going to take yours, but I agree with yours. How to Survive and How to Survive 2 were great co-op games. Yotun is brutally fucking difficult, but that was a good top-down
speaking of difficult
adventure action thing.
I think Sultan Sanctuary was probably like around the $20 mark.
Yeah, that's on here too. I didn't pick that one, Ashley did. But yeah, that's that one was brutal. Momodora was weird but fun.
I was gonna say that too. Momodora was awesome.
I'm sorry, dude. I intentionally skipped it for you.
The team
I like Neon Chrome. I want to buy that other one you told me about, that Cyberpunk one where you're playing a psychopath.
Oh.
But Neon Chrome's the same kind of thing, a twin stick.
A psychopath. The team behind Momodora actually released a new game recently. It's a Toho game in the same vein, and it looks fucking fantastic. Oh, okay. You play as Luna, I think her name is, the girl with the knives, and she wears a maid outfit. But it's like a Metroidvania style platformer where you level up and you have you can use her ability to stop time, and it plays into the stage, and there's boss fights. She throws knives. And I
watched the trailer for that when it was in alpha.
Yeah, I think it just recently came to a full game release. Yeah. They have a really cool mechanic in it too called Graze, where the closer you are, because every boss fires projectiles, it still shares a little bit of the bullet hell soul that the Toho games always had. So when enemies are shooting at you, the closer you get to their hits, you'll get a graze thing, where the closer you are, you'll get points. I don't know if it's experience, mana. I think it's mana. So you have to get yourself as close to the bullets flying at you as possible without getting hit, and it will give you resources back in return, which is really fucking cool. It looks fun as shit. The animation's awesome. It's got all the amazing Toho music. It's fucking awesome. It's on my wish list. I will pick it up at one point so I can play through it.
Toho Scarlet Curiosity, if I remember correctly, was under
that the fighting one?
$20. Not that they endorsed. It's weird. It's wonky, but it's super fun. But it's a canon story that was done by a bunch of fans, and it's handled like a top-down adventure, kind of hack and slash, whatnot. Slain, that metal one, that they brought a sequel out to Slain, because I think originally it was only on computer, and that's Back to Hell. That one was decent. Rise and Shine was good. That was also under 20. Pure Solar is fucking tops. It plays damn near like a AAA 16-bit title from back in the golden age for RPGs, using the Genesis engine, the Mega Drive. All the Trines, if I remember correctly, were $20.
Okay,
those were excellent.
All right, let's calm down. We don't need to.
Zombie Vikings was good, and Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap.
Okay. All right, I have a few down here too that I thought were phenomenal. Valhalla, which is a cyberpunk bartending game. It's almost in the vein of a visual novel. So people come into your bar, you make them drinks, and you talk to them, and it's interesting characters. But oh my god, I'm going crazy! Fantastic music, fucking amazing music. Really good for a chill game that you're playing by yourself at night and just kind of experiencing it. Fantastic to set that kind of mood. Hollow Knight, phenomenal game. It's $15 on Steam. If you're a fan of Metroidvania's platformers, definitely check that game out. And the art style, music, the presentation of that game is phenomenal. It is fucking fantastic. With that as well, Celeste, fantastic platformer, fantastic soundtrack, fantastic art style, animation, everything about that. Even the story and the characters were awesome. Just overall a great package. Crosscode, very cool RPG, top-down RPG kind of, almost like it's like the setting is an MMO, but it's not an MMO. So they have NPCs running around all over the place to make it feel like it's an MMO, but it's just a typical RPG with that setting. Super cool game. Really enjoyed what I've played of it so far. I haven't finished it yet. And then I had Momodora on my list too. But yeah, all excellent games. And there's so many great indies that you could come across. Minecraft is actually $30. Never mind. I think it used to be.
The Shantae games are really good.
Yeah, Shantae games are great. Thinking of other indies that I've played personally that were fantastic. Cultist Simulator is a cool card narrative driven game. Red Strings Club, I think, was less than $20. And that was an awesome narrative driven game. Iconoclast is a really cool fucking. Now I'm just doing the same thing Shawn was doing, so I'll stop. But all awesome games that I highly recommend you try. Just add them to your backlog. That's probably ever expanding. But thank you for the question, Lark. We appreciate it. If you guys want to send us questions, we will talk about anything. If it's something that comes across your mind throughout the week, you want to let us know what we think, or you want us to tell you what we think about it, feel free to hit us up. You can do it through Discord and the hashtag or the mailbag section of our Discord. You can do it through Twitter with the hashtag TP mailbag. You could do it through Facebook through our instant messenger, or even email thoughtpatrolcast@gmail.com. We'll add them to the show and we'll talk about them here in this segment. We'd love to hear from you guys. Definitely good questions this week. We're going to go ahead and move forward. We have box office tops. Movies are happening and things are going on. Number one is actually probably to no one's surprise, since it's the only like thing that had somewhat attention that it garnered throughout its like up and coming launch and stuff like that, is Us, the one that's by the same dude that did Get Out. What's his name? Jordan Peele. So I've heard it was good. It's doing well in theaters. It made $70,000 for the weekend. Said it with a budget of only 20 or 70 million, with a budget of only 20 million. In its first week. Worldwide, it's only made about 86 million, but it's doing good. I've heard good things about it. But it looked interesting. I'll probably wait till DVD. Speaking of DVDs, I actually saw Into the Spider-Verse again today. I showed it to my father because he didn't see it. I watched it with my friends. I love that movie. Number two, there's Captain Marvel pulling 35 million for the weekend, sitting at a total of 910 million worldwide. How's this movie making so much money? Making more foreign than it is domestic. You could literally slap the Marvel name on anything and make close to $1 billion with it at this point. Because that movie was incredibly average. I don't think it was worth $1 billion in revenue, but hey, a lot of people are excited for Endgame. That will probably make $1 billion in a weekend.
I'd say Captain Marvel was borderline bad.
It definitely wasn't
so
good.
Average, but no, it wasn't. Like I told everyone that's asked about it so far, like if you don't see it, you've missed absolutely nothing except for a extremely subpar movie. The good thing was what's his face's performance.
Oh yeah.
And that I mean it was such a fucking mess. And it was
Samuel L. Jackson.
Even he, man,
Well,
I still felt like he was phoning it in sometimes. No, I can't remember his fucking name. The guy that was the bad guy in Ready Player One.
I could shoot
the head scroll.
Ben Mendelsohn.
Ben Mendelsohn, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, cool. There's a list of names. I read one.
Barely even looked like Lee Pace. Yeah, it was Ben Mendelsohn. The misandry, the weird forced feminist agenda when the character was feminist enough just as it stands, like forcing all that shit, and then to drive the point home, like when she was standing over the guy, that fucking scene just came off so forced and corny.
We've talked about it. ad nauseum, but
Yeah, it's garbage.
I hated her performance, just as a
If you want to watch a movie that's got positive femme-centric, not feminist, because that word's just hate now. But if you got the positive femme-centric messages, just go watch fucking Wonder Woman. And that movie, Wonder Woman, was an average superhero movie, and it was better than this by leaps and bounds. The characters were more likable, even though they abandoned certain plot threads, and the bad guy was dumb, and there was huge sections of the movie that were a waste of time. Wonder Woman was still a better superhero movie than this one was, and I enjoyed Wonder Woman even with its flaws, and it had a lot. This was worse. The worst Marvel movie, worse than Iron Man 2 or even 3. It was just a mess. I did like I did like Ben Mendelsohn though. He was an interesting character. If only they didn't fuck absolutely everything else up.
okay. Number 3, we got Wonder Park, a kids movie. I didn't even see advertisement for this. It pulled
I saw like 2.
pulled 9 million. Number 4, we got 5 Feet Apart. Don't know what this is either. It's a romance, so I could not care less. Pulling 4 million. Or 8 million, I mean. I read the wrong number. And at number 5, we have How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, pulling 6 million for the weekend. So, overall, slow weekend. Us coming out, it pretty much dominated because there's nothing else going on. So that's cool. Let's see. Battle Angel Alita pulled almost $1 million for the weekend. That's nice. Spider-Man still making money somehow. Pulled $250,000. Still in theaters somewhere. Probably because it won the award, but we said that last week. So that's what's going on in the box office. Excitement, not necessarily because there's nothing going on. The big thing will be when April comes around. We got Endgame. That will shake the earth with its release. So moving forward, we have our What to Look For segment. There's a few games coming out this week, ladies and gentlemen. And they may or may not be interesting to you. They're most certainly not interesting to me. We have Tropico 6 coming to PC, PS4, Xbox One, March 29th. And Yoshi's Crafted World coming to Nintendo Switch on the 29th as well. And that's about it for video games dropping. So we're just going to go ahead and blow through what we can here. We have some news real quick. A few things happened this week before we go into talking about Stadia. Persona 5 The Royal has been announced for PS4, and the trailer teased a new character. I am a huge fan of Persona, the Persona series, and Persona 5 as a whole. It seems like Royal is a Game of the Year edition. That's what I'm feeling. They haven't straight out come out and said it, as far as I understand. But from the way they're marketing it has to be a Game of the Year edition. Now, one interesting thing is, like I said earlier, this Game of the Year edition has focused on
the same thing as For Gold.
Yeah, has focused on a new female character who's a student at the academy. Oh my god. God, I just literally had a fat brain shit. It was pretty bad. It wasn't even a brain fart. It was a brain shit. Like, it literally dumped into my skull. But she showed off in the trailer. They basically asked what she thinks about the Phantom Thieves. So she's going to be introduced into the story. Now, one thing is, how are they going to roll her into the story? Because the way the game ends, without spoiling anything, it's not very open. So I can't see this happening after the game ends. I can see it happening in the middle. So maybe you'd have to. So would you have to play the game entirely over to see this new character? Like, when does she come in the story? What month does she introduce and stuff like that? So it'd be interesting to see. But they did something like this recently as well. Atlas, they dropped a new character for Catherine when they released it on the PC. So this isn't, I don't remember them doing this ever before, Shawn, where they introduced characters in Game of the Year editions or further installments, not installments, but editions of the same installment. Have you seen this before? I don't remember them ever doing this before.
Not story-based characters. Normally they'll introduce characters in said game, but it doesn't impact. It's just never seen them do it in an RPG before. I mean, Golden, I don't recall them introducing
I don't either.
New characters. They might have. I never played the original Persona 4. I went straight to Golden, but all I read was it was like some additional dungeons and activities and things like that that they expanded it out with. But the only thing is you've got to rewrite the plot to fit the.
Yeah, I
It
don't know.
might just be like some additional spin-off stuff or crossover stuff that doesn't impact, kind of like filler or well-written filler.
Yeah, I have no clue.
Like in 4, they added the blue-haired girl as a romantic option, and she wasn't originally or a friend option.
Laggy bitch.
I don't. A girl sits in the limousine with the freaky guy that gives you
Yeah,
your ability. Beat
yeah.
nose.
Finally, they did tease that more information will be revealed April 24th with one of their live concert events, Persona Super Live 2019. So we'll probably hear more from it at that point. That'd be so cool, being able to go to a concert for Persona. It's like straight.
Funny part is I'm gonna end up buying an expanded version of the game I haven't played yet.
Collector's edition.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna take the other one that I've got
Sell it.
opened and just bring it back and trade or something.
Exactly.
Maybe now before the fucking game comes out.
All right. Another thing recently.
Hey, Shep, I bought Nier. All right, that gives me some fucking forget.
I guess the fact that it doesn't matter that you bought it's the fact that you haven't played any of these games. That's the thing.
I'm playing Devil May Cry, aren't I?
Yeah, 2 missions in. I'll just play with you. All right. Another thing, we've been talking off and on about this whole kind of like new generation Sega X Nintendo war going on with Epic Games and Valve. It almost feels like an adult version of that. But there was more news, not necessarily news, but it feels like there's a little kids playground fight going on between Epic and Steam. More like Epic, more like you see a child that's like in 5th grade and a child that's like in 7th grade, or maybe a child that's like supposed to be in 9th grade, but they've been held back a few times, so they already have like facial hair going on. They're just really big and buff because they work out at the gym kind of thing. Little kid's Epic going up and kind of punching the kneecaps of the bigger kid, and they're just kind of taking it. But Epic, basically, the idea what's going on is they threw a little bit of shit at Steam for the recent controversies they've been having with their the sexual games, especially the more bad ones that were removed, like Rape Day, which, if you haven't heard of, it was a game that took place in a zombie apocalypse where you can choose to sexually assault the survivors, blah blah blah. It was on Steam it actually didn't even go to the store, but it was in like the pre-order phase, and they basically removed it from the store. Put out a pretty good PR little statement saying like, oh hey, we respect developers' rights to make this kind of stuff, but we don't feel like this is a good way for them to distribute it. We don't feel like it matches with our guidelines, blah 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 kind of thing. But basically, to get to the actual thing is what's going on. The CEO behind Epic Games, Tim Sweeney, he recently he did an interview where he talked that they won't be, like, the Epic Games Store will not be accepting crappy games or kind of things like that. More in tune with, he actually said that they're not in the porn industry. That was like quote unquote his words. And basically, he did an interview with PC Gamer, and he said that the Epic Games Store won't be distributing low-quality games, although it's unclear how that quality will be determined. The Epic Games Store will have a vetting process to ensure only, quote, reasonably good quality games of any scale, whether small indie games to huge AAA games, make the cut. Further quote, we have a quality standard that doesn't accept crappy games, Sweeney said. We'll take everything up to like an R-rated movie or an M-rated game. Sweeney also implied that the quality standard will not gatekeep developers from experimenting. So basically, this is kind of like the opposite of how Steam has taken this, where now the thing is Steam, one interesting thing about this is the idea to cut back a bit on the filtering that the store was doing with games being added to the store was not a Steam-only decision. It was actually both Steam making a decision in reacting to the community, what the community was asking for. They're having issues with Steam, kind of the way that the Steam filtered its store, and people were like, there was actually a big event. It was, what was it called? It was like the anime titty apocalypse or some shit like that, where a bunch of like nude or like games that had graphical content, like nudity in them, that ended up being visual novels most of the time, were being censored. They were being removed from the store, and people were complaining that this has been here, it should stay here. So the Steam kind of cut back on their filtering of stuff like that. So now, unless it's explicitly a troll game or something designed to incite some kind of controversy, then for the most part, you're good to go with Steam. But basically, Epic has come against that and clashed and basically berated Steam for that take on the market, saying that their game would be, or that their market would be more of a cleaner version of Steam in a way. Which, again, the fact that I think Steam, you can't really berate a company for listening to its community kind of thing, because it's something that was done in tandem with them. And I just think it's kind of almost like low blows at this point. That's why I made the analogy earlier of a little kid beating on the knees of a ninth grader. Oh my God, I'm losing my mind. But I just find it interesting. Again, it feels like we're having a Nintendo x Sega war again, except it's not openly being advertised on television. It's just more of people yelling at each other, and it's being written about.
Not to mention the console wars were fun for the participants, for people who are in on playing. Like, we had loads of fun in school going Sega versus Nintendo. I was in Nintendo camp, the edgelords in the Sega camp. We would go fucking head to head. Nintendo won because it's always better. But it was that was super fun, man. You'd see all the creativity in the ads going back and forth, and then Sega would start with that whole like misadvertising, false advertising thing about was it blast processing, which wasn't a thing and whatnot. But I mean, it was fun, and I don't really think there was anything harmful about it whatsoever. And rarely did they ever actually sling mud at each other or say that they weren't any good. It was more like, we're better because we're faster, or we're better because we have Mario. It didn't often get insulting. I think the worst you had was like, Sega does what Nintendo don't.
Yeah.
And nobody thought that was a good catchphrase. Like, so I don't. But these guys, it's not the same. It's not fun.
Yeah.
And you're really not seeing two gaming giants go against each other. They're just retailers. It's like 7-Eleven and Circle K going to war. Not that anybody knows what those are. For the people who are in Sweden, 7-Eleven and Circle K are convenience stores, competitive outlets. Or if you're in California or somewhere where there isn't a 7-Eleven, Circle K is everywhere. It's like herpes.
One final thing real quick that I want to say, I'm more of just watching this take place with these two going at it. I don't like the way that Epic has taken its approach to the competitive attempt at the market, but I do like the I like the sentiment where they're going with. Like, another quote from Sweeney, he said that the PC is an open platform. If we don't distribute it in our store, these developers will still be able to reach consumers directly, either through websites, stuff like that. Now, that's not necessarily always the case, because depending on the funds that you have for that site, if you don't have a server or a data center to distribute the files to client side PCs and shit like that, you can have problems with distribution, with sites going down, dealing with traffic and shit like that. And now, that's not always the case with a lot of these indies, because they're smaller. It's still a possibility. But I like the idea of Epic incentivizing like this. This is an incentive. We're a cleaner version of Steam. Now, there's slinging mud, that's fine, but it's still incentives. Like, the only thing that really has pissed me off with Epic is the fact that they're doing these timed exclusivity deals. And it's not necessarily just Epic's fault, because they're just providing the option. It's the publishers that are taking these options. But in it, it's not like they're forcing them. They've extended the hand, and it's a mutual handshake kind of thing. So I think the fault kind of goes in both ways. I'd rather, especially in a market that has always been considered to be open, like Sweeney said himself, the idea is that you don't want to restrict your consumer base, because then you separate them. The idea is to incentivize. Let these games launch on both platforms, but add ways to have people come to your service, but not force them, dragging and kicking and screaming, because then you breed almost a resentment in your consumer base. Now, again, a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's just a launcher," but we've talked about this again. But in its current state, it's a shitty launcher. It has a lot of features that some people in different countries would even consider vital, such as regional pricing and stuff like that. So it's just a weird spot. I'm interested to see where it goes, but that's about it. Again, I just thought, I think that Sweeney's approach here is interesting. And I'm all for a competitor for Steam. I feel like one thing that Steam should do to react to this whole thing is to drop their prices. Don't take as big of a cut for distributing these games to people. In turn, games become cheaper on the PC platform, at least, because developers are making more money from their games. So that allows a smaller gate to entry for people that want to buy games, and it's just overall a better thing. More people are spending money because they don't have to spend as much money, so they feel it being a better deal, blah, blah, blah. Developers are getting technically the same amount of money. Well, they'd be getting more if more people are buying. But the idea is the same. You're helping the consumer market with these actions, but then at the same time, Epic's fucking us because they're forcing exclusivity when it doesn't necessarily have to be done that way, especially in, again, a market that's always, or tried to always be open. I don't know why I took so much time to explain that, because we've talked about it already. But if you didn't listen to last week's episode, you're caught up. So, and a lot of people don't even give a shit about this because it's a PC problem. And a lot of our listeners, I think for the most part, are console, at least from the ones I've spoken with. So, interesting stuff. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Sorry, yeah, I have a puppy that while you were talking decided to come up and investigate my microphone.
Nice. Speaking of dogs,
in case you heard his nose,
I went to go get food, and I looked at Bruce, and he was just like depressed and sad from being inside. So I'm like, "Come on, bud," and I basically brought him in my car. I opened the door. He decided to jump into the driver's seat and sit there for about 5 minutes until I persuaded him to go to the other side. And it was a very bad idea, because the way my car is he was excited, obviously, to be going somewhere, so he was practically shaking. Like, he was so excited, looking all over the place, panting, as dogs do in the car. And so he'd go from the window, but the problem is a lot of the time we've taken him places, we either have him in the back or in the passenger seat, there'd be like a actual break between the two seats. My car does not have that. Well, it's not large. So this bitch, while we were driving down the road, he's like, "Oh,
I can already see where this is going."
Oh, shit. Master's over there all by himself, and I'm here in the passenger seat. He's got to be lonely. I got to make him feel good. So he forces himself upon me while I'm driving like 40 miles an hour down the road. And he's just practically attacking me in the driver's seat. And I'm looking over this 90-pound dog trying to not crash into anything. And for the rest of the car ride, I basically had to put my hand on his chest to hold him in the passenger seat. And I just kind of scratched him with, I pet him with my hand, but I held him there. And eventually he gave up and went to the other window and just kind of chilled. But he's such a fucking like lap dog in every sense. He's like, I gotta be like, Master's so lonely. I haven't nuzzled with him in like 30 seconds. I have to let him know that I love him. So I'm gonna go do that and potentially kill us both.
He's a terrier. What do you expect?
Yeah. So that shit was crazy. And then I didn't think about it. I was going to get food. So I get the food and I'm sitting there. I'm like, where do I put the food? He's in the passenger seat. So I basically have to yeet all the food into the back seat, which he saw. So now the rest of the car ride is me keeping him not only in the passenger seat and distracted, but away from all the delicious food in the back seat. It was a fucking mess, bro. Thank God I did not have to go far to get that food. Oh my God. He was all over the place. And then he's actually really good about listening when when I take him out, he doesn't always have to be on a leash unless we actually go for a walk. But if I take him out to the front to go get something or go do something, he'll be responsive to calling his name, and he won't stray at all, which is really nice. So I basically just opened the door, he followed me outside, and I opened the car door and he just hopped immediately in the driver's seat, and he was good from there. But he doesn't tend to stray, which is really nice. Yeah, pretty much, bro. Like, Bruce, you taking us to go get the food? I'll sit in the second seat, dude. I'm down. So
I'll take a nap. Wake me up when we get there.
yeah, exactly. So that was that. Let us know what you guys think. What do you think about the Valve Epic little tussle going on? Or it's not really much of a tussle, but more like a little bit of poo throwing. You guys excited for Persona 5? If you haven't heard of Persona 5, get the fuck out of here and go play that game. Shawn included. But now we're going to move on to a little bit of our main topic. We're going to talk about Google Stadia. So if you guys have not heard of Stadia, it is a new service coming out. It's not necessarily a console, but it does hope to be a console replacement in the future. But it works kind of like, I'm sure you guys have heard the term thrown around before, Netflix for games. It basically is a cloud-based gaming service, almost in the vein of PS Now, or I know they had an Xbox one back in the day that didn't really go anywhere. But this one hopes to not only practically eliminate latency, again, their words, so take this with a grain of salt, this is what they're saying, with the lead designer being, I gotta find his name. I have an article here that we're gonna actually pick and choose from. It's the two big designers behind it, which is Phil Harrison and Majd Bakar, and they are the two developmental leads behind Stadia. And they actually have it here. The Xbox service was called OnLive, and it was the same idea as PlayStation Now. But the thing that interests me about Stadia, and if it does kind of take off, that it can become a mainstay for gamers. Like, it can very easily become the next thing that we all have in our house in reference to playing games. Now, there are a lot of people that are against the idea for a few different reasons, and one of them being DRM. A lot of people always bring up the DRM, the fact that since these are all things that exist within a service, and the moment that you no longer have the license, aka paying the $15 to $30 a month to play all the games, you have lost access to all your games. Simple as that. Same thing with Netflix. If you're playing for Netflix, you could watch every single show on this fucking service. The moment you stop paying for it, you have no access to any of it. It is lost. You have lost your license to view that material. The same thing would work with this. You would not be buying games. It'd be purely in the realms of you pay a certain amount of money a month. They haven't released anything for monetization, which kind of worries me, because from what I've heard from people that have been talking about it, I can't see anybody paying more than like $20 a month for this kind of shit. People are thinking of it in the realms of Netflix. It'd probably be like between 10 and 15 a month for it to get anywhere. That's the only time I can see it getting anywhere. If it goes any higher than that, then I could see them having problems, because they're not going to get a lot of people picking this up right off the bat, especially for another few reasons. But another thing is that with Stadia, since it basically works again like PlayStation Now, except the idea that it is cloud processing. So think of it in the realms of it could be done anywhere. That's the idea. You could do it from your phone, computer, anywhere that has like a decent video encoder. Anywhere can do that. That's the idea of Stadia. On your TV, it does come with a controller, a little Stadia controller, and that's how you operate it. But the idea is that basically Google will have the data center set up where they have these basically they're supercomputers. And I have the specs here, give you an idea, although for some people this is practically alien language. But the GPU has 10.7 teraflops of power, which is 3 times the power of the Xbox One X. There's 56 computing units as HBM2 memory, as a custom x86 processor that works 2.7 gigahertz. That's hyper-threaded, 16 gigabytes of RAM, up to a 484 gigabyte a second transfer speed, and L2 plus L3 cache of, I don't know what the fuck that is, of 9.5 megabytes. So the idea, in layman's terms, is Google will set up basically these huge data centers, almost like servers that if you were playing something like an MMO you would connect to, except all the processing being done is through their hardware. So you'll have a really big, strong computer. It will render the game for you, and all it does is take the feed that this computer is outputting, and it will transfer it to you through almost as if a video feed that you control real time. Again, there's a few issues that people have with these kind of things. Another one being latency. Now, they do hope to completely eliminate latency as a whole, which is possible from what I've heard. Now, I'm not too knowledgeable on a lot of this stuff, but they say that as computing gets better and compression rates get faster, just as they do naturally, as people find better ways to program compression, and there's even to the realm of like quantum computing and predictive computing, where the way it works is that in order to in order to prevent latency, these supercomputers are not only rendering your game, but they are predictively rendering your game. Now, again, this is like this all sounds like fucking science, like 2025 or like cyberpunk level shit. But the idea is that in the realms of processing, that it is predictively processing the frames of the game so that it can get to you faster than taking that time to move over the internet, which would, if that's what creates latency. The idea and the problem with that we've had with this till now is the idea that everyone has to connect to the server, and because everyone is different distances from the super center, naturally your internet will take a little bit longer to get there and get back. And that's what ping is. The amount of time it takes for your client to ping the server and the server to ping back that information. And then that's measured in milliseconds. I'm thinking, what else is going on here? We do know that what I have here, it is basically a interview from Eurogamer, done by Digital Foundry. Excellent fucking YouTube channel if you've never heard of them. They are, if you like the idea of understanding how games are rendered, how games are processed and shit like that, and stuff like AA and all that other crap, and learning about those, Digital Foundry does an excellent job of kind of explaining in layman's terms things like that. And they basically, a lot of what they do is they take a new game that's come out and they test it on every system, see how it does, like for frame rate and stuff like that. But one thing that they had said is they had questioned the team, and they basically said, in Project Stream, you had specified that a minimum of 25 megabits of bandwidth is required by the user. They asked, is that purely for the streaming, or are you including overhead for other people using the same connection simultaneously? And they had responded basically saying, we'll be enhancing on top of stream. So you would have to expect these numbers to go down with time as they improve and optimize the system. But they definitely hope to get below that number. This is another big problem with people, because there's a lot of hurdles to get through with this. One of those being infrastructure, communication infrastructure. Not everyone has good internet connection. It's just not how it is. A lot of countries have bad internet infrastructure still, and communications infrastructure. Even some places in the States have shitty internet. Shawn does not have the best internet in the world, so he would have issues streaming a game that is in 4K 60 FPS to his
I have issues streaming a 400 game, much less 720p or 1080.
yeah.
Fucking Sony made the mistake of thinking people were going to be streaming 4K video when most people don't have a connection that can do that. And even the people that do have a connection can do that sometimes struggle. So they didn't put a fucking 4K Blu-ray on there, whereas Xbox One X did. So Sony kicked themselves in the foot. But anybody that thinks that no matter what kind of technology Google's doing on their end, that they're going to be able to compensate for what you don't have is thinking foolishly.
Well, a lot of with it is it's working with the smallest common denominator. So a lot of what ends up happening is advancements have to be made in order to get it to work in that realm. Thinking of like in like, say if you look at like an MMO, a lot of time they shoot for the smallest common denominator. The idea that you make a game that can run on any system. This is the idea with this, just in the realms of internet speed. The idea is that as algorithms get better from managing compression, so basically taking data, making it smaller so it can travel over speeds that can handle a smaller load, and then having algorithms decompress that in a way where it does not show a visible loss of quality. As those methods get better and those algorithms get stronger, I can see this becoming something eventually. It's either that or communications infrastructure gets a lot better. Now, I've never seen a video game cause a country to make their communications infrastructure better. So I don't know how much power Google has in this sense. And even today, there are still a lot of internet service providers. Not only is your internet okay or not that good, on top of that function, they even have data limits. You cannot go over, like I've heard some people have like up to a terabyte. I cannot exceed a terabyte. The moment I do, every 10 gigabytes, they charge me a certain amount of money. And that can, again, another hurdle. There's so many hurdles to this technology. But again, as these methods of sending this information and packaging this information nice and neat and unpackaging it nice and neat get better, we'll see this become more of a proper service that can work everywhere. Oh my goodness. I think I'm getting sick. I think I might be getting sick because I feel my throat burning. And that sucks. But I'm thinking, what else is there here? So I'm thinking, I know also that the team behind Stadia are looking for building more building actual game companies to develop the software, develop more games for Stadia. They haven't said much about exclusives or stuff like that, but another interesting thing about Stadia as a whole is now, the way games work now is that when a company makes a video game, they have to manage things for the lowest common denominator. We can't just make a game for PC. Well, you can. But if you want to do, a lot of times games are made for console as well, and you end up having to work with multiple hardware types, so you have a range. Things have to work not only on the base PS4, but on a super-powered PC, right? So a lot of the times, things need to get cut or changed or edited in order to fit on the hardware range. And they can't be as ambitious with certain projects because, and you've heard a lot of times that, especially more in the past, because the range difference between PC and console games are kind of, the gap is slowly closing. It's not anything substantial, but it's slowly closing. So the range is getting smaller over time. But you've heard a lot in the past that games have been limited to what they can do on the console at that time. Like there were ideas that had to be scrapped and things like that. And one example that comes to mind is the game, what's the name of the game? Shawn, do you remember a game? It was a war shooter on the 360, and you basically napalm a village of people and burn them to death. I don't even know if it's napalm. It might be white phosphorus.
Modern Warfare. No, that was an airport.
Spec Ops: The Line. That's what it's called.
Yeah. Because they did something similar in Modern Warfare where you mowed down a airport full of innocents.
Yeah. In Spec Ops: The Line, there's a segment in that game where you're basically pushed back against a wall, and you're basically standing in this little platform, and enemies are firing at you from different angles. And I remember I watched a documentary on it by a gentleman named RainShard, who does fantastic video docs on video game development and stuff like that. He talked about in an interview with the devs behind the project that with that game, they wanted you to be able to move around and stuff, but because of some of the ways that the area was designed and the ways that the enemies came at you, in order to keep the theme of the area, they had to restrict you to the little area. You couldn't move around, you couldn't look for flanks and stuff like that. Now, again, that also can bring up the discussion, is it the developer's job to work with their creative flow in an environment where that can be done in a way where it won't be affected by this range. So they again, just working around it, like figure out a different thing. And that's technically what they did for that time and that limitation. But with Stadia, since if it does become something that everyone uses, people that develop for Stadia know exactly what hardware they're developing for, because it's the same hardware. Everyone uses it's as if everyone had the same superpowered computer in their house and everyone used it. So at that point, they know exactly what they're working with. They have more creative freedom because the range is only one thing and it's superpowered. So they basically shot from having a block from really good to kind of bad to just really good all the time. So they can work in that range and not have to worry about subtracting things from the overall project in order to fit in that margin, which is one thing that they also boasted about in their presentation. Also, one thing that I thought was interesting is in their presentation, they pushed split screen play, but in the realms of like couch co-op. So the idea of one person being on the console, quote unquote, using the controller. You could have someone on your phone, and because of the cloud computing, since the information is being sent to the devices from the same computer, it's not putting too much load on one instance. There are multiple instances. You can easily do couch co-op with friends using different devices. Any device that has a decent video encoder on it can do this, which is very cool as well. And it seems, again, it feels like kind of like, it reminds me of that Squidward meme where he's like crouching. So that episode, he goes to the thing and he's like future, and he's doing that. It reminds me that there's a lot of potential here for this service, but there's just so many things holding it back in its current state. I'm just really interested to see how much attention it garners when it launches, because it's set to launch later this year. This isn't something that's coming out in a few years. It drops later this year. They haven't released an exact date, but it is coming. And I personally believe that eventually, as these methods of compression and things like that get better, cloud computation and cloud processing, I do believe, is the future in a way. Just the fact it basically takes plug and play to the maximum. Now, there are things that will be lost in that, and a lot of people are worried about stuff like that. I don't think anytime soon it will be completely replacing the hardware side, because there's a lot of people that still are attached to the physical component of video games, keeping that legacy, the fact that you can still buy an old system, buy an old game cartridge, and play that game in the way it was originally intended to be played, and not have to worry about that, and you can preserve that game over time if you take good care of it. And people like that idea of building a collection and things like that. So again, there's so many hurdles against this service in its sense that I definitely don't see it replacing straight up hardware anytime soon. But it just seems like such a cool idea coming from Google that we never saw coming, that it's definitely interesting to see how this continues and how it's pushed and where it goes from there. Especially, again, you wouldn't have to worry. They talk about crossplay, every game ever. You wouldn't have to worry about having an older PlayStation or having a mid-tier PlayStation or having a mid-tier Xbox. Every game will always run at the best of that time. Like right now it's 4K 60 FPS, although they have talks about going into 8K 120 FPS, which just, again, but hey, at that point, I can't even imagine you doing 8K on your little shitty dainty like phone or whatever. But it removes that worry, and I think ease of access is one thing that's really important here, because for a lot of people, they will always take the path of least resistance, and to some people, DRM is not a thing. It doesn't really matter to them. They don't care. They don't care about the idea of preserving physical versions of games and stuff like that. So for this being the road of least resistance, the true definition of plug and play, I can easily see it's being adopted by quite a lot of people that don't have the time outside to worry about like DRM or, again, preservation, as long as they have a decent internet connection. And then again, as time goes on, we can see that become less and less of a problem as compression and algorithms get better for like this predictive computation shit that they're talking about, which I still don't really have a good idea of what the fuck that means. Let's see. I'm looking if there's any questions here that will add to this conversation. Shawn, do you have? I know you pretty much have gripes with the system. Do you have anything that you'd like to add in realms of what you think could be the future of Stadia, or would you like to see this just kind of coexist with hardware? What do you think about Stadia?
I don't like it anytime I try and buy a piece of software and it sits on someone else's server. I don't like the fact that I'm spending money just as much or the same amount as somebody on a console, but yet I don't have a physical copy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the digital-only releases of numerous games, they don't all come in $30 or $40 less. They don't all come in on sale. They come in at 60, just like the console ones, but they didn't produce the hard copy.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't have the additional overhead, but they're still making more profit. These businesses, they've wanted control of the things they sell you since the beginning. If you have any questions about that, look at Nintendo's entire history.
Yeah.
They've made a pattern of cracking down on users and restricting rights and all kinds of shit. And before you say, oh, well, Nintendo's an outlier, they're not. Microsoft wants to do the same thing. Sony wants to do the same thing. The less rights you have, the less things you have in your hand that they can't take away from you, the worse off you are. And the more control they have, which means they can do more. And they will. I promise you. When you have a situation where somebody has absolute control over your games and what you play, they will decide what you can play, what you can't play. They will decide how those games are edited, what they will enforce changes on games that wouldn't have been made before they're allowed to enter the platform. All kinds of bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just now getting away from that kind of shit. And for them to want to put us back in the dark ages by bringing out new technology is frustrating to me. It is so frustrating. Google has proven to be a company that does not accept new ideas. Or let me rephrase, only accepts new ideas. Look at what they do to their employees. One guy comes out with an opinion that's not popular, and it's based in fact, and they fire him. They fire him. There was nothing. It was a constructive piece. Now, do I think that it was career suicide by sending that out? Of course I do. I look at what happened to Jerry Maguire. Fuck. But I mean, to sit there and put any kind of sense or logic in a company that prides itself on being an echo chamber is not good, because you've got a company that refuses to have any perspective but a set amount that fit inside of this box.
Mm-hmm.
And this box thrives on ignorance. And I don't want to go political here, because I'll be honest with you, and Kyle, you know me personally enough to know I'm not a political person, but I believe absolutely in personal freedom. I believe absolutely in our inalienable rights. And Google does not. Look at how they trade your information. They barter on your identity. Look at how they sell that stuff. Look at what they've done to their employees that don't have the same political viewpoints that they do, or don't feel the same way that they do. They pride themselves on diversity, but aren't. And then you take that mentality and you apply it to a digital console that is supposed to supply games to you, and they will decide what you get to play, what you don't get to play, what gets to be on the platform, what doesn't. And if you don't think that that's going to affect how developers develop games and they want to get games in as many hands as possible so they can make as much money as possible, then you're fooling yourself. That that single act can change the face of gaming in so many negative ways. On top of forcing a technology curve that people can't keep up with or afford.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrible in every sense of the word. The only good idea was the streaming games idea. And for people that don't care about having possessions or buying discs or that kind of thing, people who maybe they've got an extreme limit on shelf space and they really can't buy games because they don't have anywhere to keep them. The streaming game service isn't a terrible idea. It's not one that I want. It's not one that I want to have anything to do with, and it's not one that I support. But I'm sure there are people out there that can benefit from it. But Google would be the worst company to do it because Google does not care about what other people think, and Google does not care about a right to have a product or a right for a product to exist. All they care about is what their mantra is, what is making them money, and whatever the popular status quo happens to feel at the moment. That's the only thing that matters to Google. So I do not for a moment think that this is a good idea. I'm extremely against it. It's not. I'm not one of those people that's like, well, I hope it fails because I don't. That's not true. But I don't want Google doing it. I've already seen how they handle other ideas. I've already seen how they handle privacy. I've seen how they handle digital rights management, and none of it is good. And if for a moment you think that it's good guy Google, you're all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I am very, very against it. I still believe that you're not secure with your information until you have it. At any point in time, Sony can shut down their servers or take something off of their servers, or in case they that Silent Hill
Mm-hmm.
promo, the one that was so good that Konami had Sony yank off. So anybody who downloaded it, who had rights to it because they downloaded it, now the only way you're ever going to be able to play it is if you're on one of those systems. It's bullshit when you don't have a disc in hand. Even Steam's still dangerous that way, but Steam has that policy in place where if they go under, there's a server or something where you can get your games from. You were the one that told me about that. Steam at least has a backup thing, so you know if they fucking flip, you're able to get your shit within a certain number of days after the company goes belly up.
Yeah.
But that doesn't exist with Google, and they're not making that. It's purely digital. You buy your ability to play these games, but you don't own the games.
It's just a
You
license.
lose them anytime they want to take them off the platform.
Yeah.
So no, I don't like it at all. I hate every single thing about it. It is something I am dead set against. I don't even like digital games, but a lot of games are released without physical media, so I don't have a lot of choice. That's where all of my indie games in the PlayStation 4 came from, is because indie games can't afford to press disc. So that's the only way that I can play them. I don't like the direction that gaming has been moving anyway, because it's moving farther and farther away from the gamer having control over what is in their possession and farther into someone else having it.
Yeah.
That's why I've never been fond of cloud saves. I like them for specific things, but not for everything. Because the less control you have, the more control someone else has. And that is the part that bothers me. And Google has shown themselves time and time again to be more than happy to have the control over you. So I don't like the idea at all. I also think technically it's foolish because most people don't have great internet, and internet is still expensive.
Yeah.
This internet that I have now is like $90 a month or some shit like that. But that's also because it's including a landline phone. I'm not paying for it. So in exchange, I bought the more expensive version of Netflix, so that the person who's paying for the internet has Netflix, and I have access to internet. And it's shitty internet, but I definitely couldn't do what they want to do. I don't see how anyone on a DSL line could, unless they live right next door to the.
Yeah, and again, we'd have to see how they roll it out. A lot of the jargon they've been throwing around, if they do manage to find a way to properly compress this information and get it to you, where it's almost at the point you're just playing a video, which that idea sounds crazy, then I can see it being simple as opening up YouTube, but you're playing the YouTube video. But it really comes down to how the technology goes forward. Another thing I've heard is with Google tends to start a project, and if they don't see the project heading or growing exponentially, I've heard from people, this is just opinions on the internet, that they tend to kind of take power from that project, so remove people from the project, put it in something else. So say they drop Stadia, it doesn't do as well as they thought, they'll kind of pull an EA, drop a skeleton crew on Stadia to keep it running, but then switch power back over to like Google Fiber or getting other things up and running comparatively.
Google Fiber is an awesome idea.
So,
but yeah, Google does that, or they'll cannibalize their project like they did with that thing that didn't take off.
Yeah,
it still exists. They're still working on it, but they're thinking about other applications now instead of the way they originally had envisioned it. They're talking like military applications and a whole bunch of other stupid shit. Back when Google started, man, they were anti-government control. They didn't want to give the government any information. They didn't want the government to be able to go in and take our information. But that attitude switched hardcore like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They fucking flipped, and they went from being our ally to just another business that's out for itself and doesn't care. And everything that they do, even with all the SJW lip service they've been playing for like the last 10 or 15 years, it's been uncovered that they have favoritism in the hierarchy, that certain people of color are not getting promoted, that women in a lot of situations are not getting promoted. There's a whole bunch of dirtiness involved in Google. Like it used to be this sacrosanct holy thing. They had the best search engine. There were these freedom warriors on the internet. They were a successful business that maintained an independent identity, but that rapidly shifted, and I do not trust them at all now. They're right up there with Microsoft.
my
As a matter of
biggest
fact, I might trust Microsoft more now.
my biggest thing with going this route as well is kind of the idea of the DRM, not necessarily me owning a game, but the fact that and there's a lot of services that are kind of shifting this way, as you were saying, especially in the PC market. A lot of things is digital, but I just don't like the idea, like you said, that if something happens for whatever reason and a game needs to be taken off the market, since you're just paying to use the service, like Netflix. Save Netflix,
you have no rights.
If you're watching a really good Netflix show, man, like you're into it, but something happens, they have to take it off, you've lost the access to that. There's nothing you can fucking do to watch that unless you go watch it somewhere else.
Or what if you want to show the show to your friends, or you want to share it with your family and it's gone now? Yeah. You want to go back and play a classic game, but they've taken it off.
For whatever reason.
You have no control. You have no rights. And Nintendo has wanted to take away your rights forever. They've even wanted to say that when you bought a game, and this was back during the 8-bit cartridge days when they were at war with Blockbuster, that they were trying to say that you were licensed to play the game, but they could revoke the license at any time. But you can't do that. I bought the physical hard copy. Mm-hmm. This is mine to do whatever. If I want to fucking nut inside this thing and jam it in my asshole, I have the right to do that.
Exactly.
I can stick a whole fucking Nintendo library up there and have a surgeon remove it if I want. America. You can't tell me I can't do that. But Nintendo has always wanted to. And look at what they've done to people that they suspected of piracy. They lock them out of their 3DS. They can't even use the hardware they paid for. And a lot of these people weren't pirates. You know, like shit like that comes up. You can't take somebody's right away to play a game. And it's becoming harder and harder to maintain those rights the more digital we are, because it's a digital right. And that kind of shit shifts. The laws on that are not great. There's not a lot to protect consumers in the digital space. It still favors, it's weird because depending on what you're looking at, it favors consumer or it favors the business. So that's an entirely different thing. I do not like it when Google is entirely in control and we have no rights except for we're buying a library card that they can take back at any. So you base your entire gaming experience around something that Google can shut down or fuck up any way they want, and you have no say. You can't tell me, even in the space we're in now, that if you bought a PlayStation or an Xbox, bought 30 games, and then Microsoft decided they didn't like you, they could lock you out of your online component. They could probably lock you out of your system. But that's unlikely. You would
Well,
still be able to play your games in most situations, even if Microsoft didn't like you.
It's not even a system at that point, because for the most part, there's no hardware. So they just revoke your right to access the material if something does happen. Yeah. Again,
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I think it's foolish, and I think it's a waste of resources. I think they could be finding ways to utilize that technology in a lot more beneficial ways than that. But
I think as long as it never fully replaces full-on hardware, and it just is kind of like an existing, so like in the future, it's PlayStation, Xbox, Stadia. And as long as, again, as long as there's no, I hate it, but as long as they don't force third-party exclusivity on their platform, no third-party exclusivity, so say like fucking Borderlands 3 comes out only on the Stadia, as long as they don't pull that shit, I'm okay with this just coexisting for now, because I doubt
if it was to supplement, if they never try, but they're going to do that. Dude.
Oh no, definitely.
They're going to do that.
No, they're going to try to. They want to make as much money as they can.
If it was supplementary, because it would be great to be able to play a back library, especially like those classic PC games, a lot of which now have gone outside of copyright. So they're, what's the word? When a public domain.
Yeah.
Like if they were to load up like a shitload of public domain PC games that are hard to find, like Hell or Full Throttle or stuff like that. Full Throttle was recently re-released along with a bunch of LucasArts back catalog, but that's aside from the point. You wanted to play Sam & Max, you wanted to play fucking Half-Life, the original Half-Life or something like that, on the best stats and the best specs and et cetera, like it'd be great for stuff like that. And if you wanted to include modern PC games on there, then fucking go ahead. But I don't think they're going to do it for the benefit. It's not going to be one of these things where they're backing up computer games and it's something where everybody can get access to it. They're going to choose what's on the platform. They're going to edit what's on the platform. There's going to be strict guidelines as to what's on the platform. So if you want to play something and they happen to not like Leisure Suit Larry, well, you're fucked. And I don't think that's right. Now, granted, it's their business, it's their platform. Netflix doesn't have porn. But I think, I don't know. I don't like it when somebody's in total control. Like, you're allowed to put any game you want out on Sony, just about. Yeah, same thing with Xbox. Like, they're very limited on what kind of censorship they put on games, and that's something I appreciate. And to be honest, like the gaming industry overall really hasn't tried to go in that direction. It's really not something gamers are interested in.
Another thing that's interesting with Stadia is that it has YouTube integration, which is something I didn't hint on. But the idea was that, say if you're watching someone stream a multiplayer game and they have it open, all you can do is there'll be a link right below, and because the way Stadia works, you can immediately go to playing that game on your cellular device or computer just by clicking a link. That's the idea. Now, again, you'd most likely have to be paying for the service and doing all that other shit and stuff like that. But just the idea, like, it feels very futuristic. And again, I think some people will adopt this for mainly the fact that, again, it's the path of least resilience. Like, especially if they choose... resistance, resilience, whatever.
Fucking least resilience. I am the path of least resilience.
Yeah. So... I'm
an early adopter of most technology, but this is not one that I would be interested in.
I definitely get,
by any means, a fossil.
I definitely get the issues that you have. It makes complete sense, and there are a lot of other hurdles. I think once we see a few real world examples, not a few presentations at a consumer conference, I would love to see how this fares on shittier internet connections. I want to see this predictive processing at work, and how they do this fancy mumbo jumbo, and see how it runs on the Spectrum. But instead of the Spectrum being hardware this time, the Spectrum is internet speeds. So I'm interested to see if they can fully eliminate latency like they're saying. I think it'd be a pretty cool thing to do. And I'm interested to see it. Again, we'll be seeing it later this year, which is crazy as well. It's right around the doorstep, or right around the corner. So I'm interested to see what comes of Stadia. I'll be watching it closely because I feel like, again, it is something that could be a step to something new and interesting, or the first step to total and utter Skynet in the form of video games.
Yeah,
So, so definitely an interesting
you
thing.
Want to play God of War? We're gonna bomb your house.
Sell your internet to China. Oh no, that's Epic. My bad.
Epic will sell your information to China, and then China will come kidnap your male babies.
Yeah, thanks Tencent. All right. So that's about it for Stadia. I wanted to, obviously, as always, we want to extend this conversation to you guys tuning in. What do you think about this? What do you think about it? What it means for the future of gaming as a whole? Would you like this to see this fully replace hardware, or would you like to see this peacefully coexist alongside hardware, giving people more options to play games? Because I'm all for having more access for people to play games if they want to. Again, as long as you're not taking people that have stuff set up and restricting them. That's the worst thing you can do, is restrict people. You want to incentivize. We've said that a million times. That's the word of the day, incentivize. Epic, incentivize. Stadia, incentivize. Do not restrict people to one thing. People like options, and make people mad when they're forced to use one of your products, especially when they're not necessarily too dandy on the idea of it. So definitely a super interesting thing that happened this week. Again, I'm very interested to watch more of this play out, see where this goes, see how Stadia does when it fully releases. I know it's slated to release in some of the European countries, like the UK, stuff like that. Actually, do they have that here? I don't know. I know it releases in the US soon. On this article, I don't see it anywhere. But thanks to Eurogamer for the interview. Very awesome interview if you want to check that out. Also, Digital Foundry released a video and it has a link within that video to this interview. Very interesting stuff, very interesting read, and definitely feels like future talk going on here, so it's very cool. Is there anything you'd like to add, Shawn, before we call it an episode?
No, that's it, man. I'm good.
I'm cautiously optimistic. More of this, like, I like the idea of stuff like this, cool technology. As long as it doesn't end our times of fun, I'm happy with it. As long as they don't track how much mayonnaise I consume on a daily basis or the size of my most recent shit, I'll be happy. So, all right. So, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the episode. Episode 88 of the Thought Patrol podcast. Before we go, Shawn, as always, you know what to do. I'm talking longer because I didn't look up my facts, so I'm trying to draw out the conversation. Where is this fact? Oh no. Okay, I'm ready.
Hugs and kisses and all your pink parts.
Boom, got him. That's the panty dropper right there, folks. Those 5 seconds. That's what people come here for. All right. And before we go, I shall leave you all with a thought. There are more plastic flamingos in the U.S. than there are real ones.